Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name's Luke and here on this channel I talk about perfumes, focusing on designer, vintage, affordable fragrances, some niche here and there as well. So if that's something you're interested in, please consider subscribing. In today's video, I'll be talking about 8 Chypre fragrances from my collection. Chypres are fragrances that are based on a woody, mossy, floral accord, which can also include leathery and fruity notes as well. They typically have a green citrusy opening, a floral heart, and a very rich base of oak moss, labdanum, and patchouli. Some even have leather and tobacco, and there are many different kinds of Chypres, from vintage smelling to modern, from leathery, tobacco heavy, to green, fruity, floral, and even ambery. And I really love classic Chypres because they're mysterious, alluring, elegant. They capture the elegance and sophistication of a bygone era. They have a timeless feel, and they may not be for everyone. They may be too bitter, too green, and too mossy for some. And I also struggle with certain classic Chypres that are too green. I'm not going to lie, but I do love most of them. And I'll start by discussing the more vintage, drier ones with hardly any sweetness at all. And then I'll move on to some more modern ones. So let's start with a Chypre like no other. Cabochard from the French house of Gres or Gres. And this is the oldest Chypre in my collection, I believe. This was released in the late 50s. In 1959, it was created by Bernard Chant, who is also responsible for creating Azuré for Estee Lauder and Aramis for Aramis, the classic masculine fragrance. In French, Cabochard means stubborn, and the name perfectly describes the character of this fragrance. This is a strong fragrance. This is a fragrance for someone with a very strong personality, and it is said to be a fragrance portrait of Madame Gres, who was very free-spirited. She traveled to India, she created her own brand, and she also created this fragrance after her trip to India. So Cabochard was inspired by her trip to India, and she herself said that it reminded her of her walks along the long and empty beaches of India, sharp freshness of the morning air, warmth of sandalwood, a touch of flower, and comfort of the sea breeze. This was a quote. So the version that I own is the 2019 version, which was the re-release of the original. The original was released in 1959, and I believe this is still good. I'm not sure if it's as good as the original, but this one, to me, is a dry, bitter, typical old school Chypre. It's got a fresh, soapy, even slightly aldehydic opening, but once it dries down, it becomes a strong, mossy, leathery, woody Chypre. I can also smell the patchouli, but everything is very smooth and well blended. And even though it does smell like an ashtray from time to time, it does have a very strong tobacco accord, that cigarette smoke accord. It does have that, but it's so well blended that it doesn't bother me. But if you're someone who struggles with old school Chypres, this one won't be for you. This one definitely won't be for you, because this is a dark, gothic Chypre, not for the faint of heart. This is a scent from another time. This is not feminine by today's standards. It's actually pretty masculine and even unisex by today's standards. But I think it's a beautiful fragrance. It's not something that I would wear every single day, absolutely not. But I don't mind having it in my collection because sometimes I want a leathery, animalic, earthy, mossy, woody Chypre. And this one really satisfies that craving. But so does the next scent that I'm going to talk about, which is Knowing from Estee Lauder. This is another old school Chypre, but it's a bit softer, lighter and more wearable than Cabochard, in my opinion. So Knowing was launched in 1988 and it's classified as Chypre Floral. It's a very complex and rich fragrance. It's woody, earthy, powdery, spicy, floral, mossy, aldehydic in the opening, also musky and slightly animalic, and it has a staggering 26 notes. including Pittosporum, which is the flower that inspired Mrs. Lauder to create this scent. When you spray this on, it opens very intense. It's green, soapy, and even slightly fruity in the opening, and I also get some aldehydes. Even though this has a floral heart and the rose is a pretty strong note, this is still a Chypre. And in my opinion, the base is what really stands out. I can really smell the oak moss, patchouli, vetiver, sandalwood. So this is by no means a floral fragrance. It's, as I said, it's a floral Chypre. And I also detect some civet in the base. Even though this is the reformulated version, I can really smell the civet in this fragrance. It's not listed on the Estee Lauder website, but it is listed on Fragrantica. This fragrance can be quite unpleasant when you spray it on. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood for it. But if you have the patience, it dries down into a smooth, woody, powdery, rosy, mossy Chypre, and I really enjoy it. The dry down is really soft and comforting on me, and underneath all that greenery, aromatic notes, woods and mosses, there's also something sweet. It has that honeyed sweetness that so many classic Chypres have, but you have to be really patient. You have to wait for it. Knowing is a fragrance for a very self-confident wearer. It commands respect. It can be challenging, but if you put it on, people will notice. Actually, I was wearing it yesterday. I sprayed 4 sprays, and maybe an hour later, I walked past my dad, and he told me that I'd put too much on. He always tells me that, but I couldn't care less. I wear fragrances for myself, and I don't care what other people think of them. So if you're looking for a dusty, rosy Chypre, definitely check out Knowing, but you'll have to be quick because I have a feeling this one might get discontinued because they already released another version called Knowing Legacy, which retails for £240. Next up, we've got Anais from Cacharel from 1978. This is a classic 70s floral scent, but it's also a Chypre, in my opinion. It's also a classic green powdery Chypre. Even though it's very strong on the florals, it has a Chypre base. In the opening, it's a powdery, soapy floral, but when it dries down, it becomes more dry, bitter, mossy, and even slightly incensey. It's not a true green Chypre like Miss Dior, the original Miss Dior from 1947, which is a potent, green and bitter, galbanum-heavy Chypre. No, this is a floral Chypre. It has a vintage vibe. The main floral note in this is white lily. In my opinion, I can really smell the lily and the hyacinth, and the hyacinth is what makes it green and bitter. And yes, it's a very green and bitter scent. It's dry, it's austere, it's not sweet at all. It has some sweetness when it dries down, but it's a very dry scent. And the performance is just incredible. This opens very strong on me. It gets weaker in 1 or 2 hours, but it really lasts about, I would say, 8 to 10 hours on me. The sillage is great, it leaves a trail, and the projection is also very good for at least 3 to 4 hours. So if you're looking for a vintage powdery floral Chypre, then Anais from Cacharel is for you. And I know that Gabby, the fragrantician, really loves this one. It might even be one of her signature scents. She mentions it all the time. But it's a very polarizing fragrance. Some people absolutely loathe this one. I have a subscriber who, every single time I talk about this, she leaves a comment explaining how it's the most vile fragrance she'd ever smelt. So there you go, Anais de Cacharel. And we finally move on to the Chypres that are a bit sweeter, a bit more modern smelling, but still vintage style, don't get me wrong, but just a bit less dry, a bit less bitter. And the first one that I want to talk about is Ysatis from Givenchy. This is a floral chypre, and even though it's a very strong white and yellow floral, it also has a pronounced Chypre base. Ysatis is an opulent 80s style powerhouse fragrance. It's floral, woody, aldehydic, powdery, musky, animalic. It's a grandiose fragrance. This is old school French perfumery. This is a loud and opulent scent. It really packs the punch. It's a classic. And it has some of my favorite notes like tuberose, ylang ylang, honey, and civet. And it was created by none other than Dominique Ropion in 1984 for the house of Givenchy. And unlike the first three fragrances that I talked about, this is not a dry chypre. This is a sweet fragrance. It's got lots of sweetness from the vanilla, from the florals, from the honey. It also has a rum note, if I'm not mistaken. So you get that classic floral sweetness, but it's not a gourmand, definitely not. But it's opulent, sophisticated, refined, and very elegant. And what makes it elegant, in my opinion, is the Chypre base. If you add a Chypre base to any classic fragrance, even if it's floral and sweet, that will instantly make it extremely elegant, at least in my opinion. Ysatis is a mysterious and seductive fragrance, just like the woman named Ysatis, arriving at a Venetian masquerade party in a gondola. And when she arrives, she turns heads, and everyone keeps asking, who is Ysatis? Has she arrived? I don't know what they're asking, but you have to watch the TV adverts from the 80s. You'll love them if you love Ysatis. So that's Ysatis from Givenchy. And yes, it is pronounced Ysatis, not Ysatis or Ysatis. Next up, we've got Timeless from Avon, and this was released in 1974. This is also a classic Chypre floral scent, but this one leans a bit more oriental in my opinion. So I would classify it as maybe a floriental Chypre. And in the opening, it is a true Chypre. It opens very citrusy, very aldehydic, also very earthy and mossy to my nose. It's got that typical Chypre opening, but then the powdery florals take over. And I can really smell the jasmine and the rose. The dry down is warm, ambery and balsamic, but also mossy, even though the Avon website does not list oak moss as a note. They only list amber, patchouli and musk. But you have to keep in mind that there is vetiver in the middle notes. So it might be the vetiver that is giving me the mossy vibe, because Chypres can also be created with vetiver. It doesn't have to be oak moss. And contrary to popular belief, oak moss can still be used in modern fragrances, but in certain amounts. It can't be overused like it used to be back in the 80s. So I don't know if this actually has oak moss or not, but I can definitely smell something mossy, and it is very much a Chypre to my nose. And this is not a vintage bottle. This is a fairly recent bottle of Timeless that was sent to me by my friend Leah from Arizona. She wore this as a signature scent and she wanted me to have it. So thank you, Leah, so much for sending this over to me. In terms of performance, this has a good sillage for about 2 hours and it lasts about 8 hours on my skin. So that's Timeless from Avon. Next up, we've got a fruity Chypre, and I'm talking about Yvresse from YSL. This was released in 1993, created by Sophia Groisman, aka the Queen of Florals. And if you watch my channel, you know that I absolutely love my vintage Yvresse from the 90s. In 1993, it was released as Champagne, but they had to rename it as Yvresse because of the lawsuit. So Yvresse is very much a fruity floral fragrance. It's sparkling, it's effervescent, it's also slightly fresh in the opening, it's joyous, it's a happy scent. But what makes it elegant and sophisticated is, you guessed it, the Chypre base. This has a very pronounced ambery Chypre base. I can smell the patchouli, the oak moss, the vanilla. It's very elegant and classy, and that Chypre base really prevents it from becoming a sweet fruity floral. It feels like a fruity floral when you spray it on, but the Chypre base is what makes it outstanding. And it truly is a masterpiece, in my opinion. Yes, it's got the rose and the violet. It's very powdery. It's also very fruity. It's even tart. It's got lychee, nectarine, peach. But that earthiness from the patchouli and oak moss really, really elevates it. And I consider this to be Sophia Groisman's best creation. Hands down, this is her best creation. The new version is still okay, in my opinion, but nowhere near the vintage. So that's Yvresse from YSL. Now let's talk about two more Chypres that are more modern, but still classic. The first one is Coco Mademoiselle. This was released in 2001. Here I have the intense version, which is just an elevated version of the original, but this applies to the original as well. Both are fruity floral Chypres or amber floral Chypres, created by Jacques Polge. And this scent is very distinct and unforgettable. It opens with citruses, it has a floral heart and a beautiful patchouli base. I absolutely adore the patchouli in Coco Mademoiselle. I adore the patchouli in Chanel fragrances. I think it's really sophisticated and refined, and I really enjoy it. So even though Coco Mademoiselle is considered a modern fragrance, a modern Chypre, this to me is already a classic because it was released over 20 years ago. So it's already a modern classic. In 10, 15 years, this will be a classic Chypre. And people on YouTube and on Fragrantica will call it a granny scent. Believe you me. And in my opinion, Coco Mademoiselle is one of the most beautiful, seductive fragrances ever. Even though it's sweet, it's fruity, it's zingy, and it smells pink. It does smell pink, you know. If you know, you know. This smells pink. It smells like the bottle. It smells pink. And even though it smells pink, this is still very deep and rich, strong on the patchouli, on the amber, and I adore it. I just adore it. It brings back so many memories for me. I think I started wearing it back in 2017, but I've been familiar with the scent, well, ever since it came out, because I was smelling it on other people a lot, because everyone in the street used to wear this one. Some people still are. I don't really smell it a lot nowadays, but some people still wear it. So that's Coco Mademoiselle from Chanel and Coco Mademoiselle Intense as well. And then I also decided to include another modern Chypre that was actually released this year. So it's a new release. It's Miss Dior Parfum, the new Miss Dior flanker created by Francis Kurdejan. This is an amber floral Chypre. It's fruity in the opening. It's got orange, wild strawberries and peach. It has a floral heart. Jasmine is the note that I can smell the most. And it also has an ambery, patchouli, woody base with a hint of oak moss, actually. So even though this has a very syrupy sweet opening, it's got that typical designer sweetness, you know. It's very fruity and very sweet. And even though it's very fruity, the base is a true Chypre base. And it's absolutely magical. It's rich, it's deep, very woody and earthy, and almost vintage smelling, actually. And this fragrance to me is all about the patchouli. And this is not a dirty patchouli, but it's a very earthy, very woody patchouli. And the base is very prominent. It really stands out. I can really smell the patchouli, the amber and the cedar, as well as a hint of oak moss. So the deep dry down is actually quite masculine leaning and very heavy on the patchouli. So you have to love patchouli in order to like this fragrance. it is deceiving. You know, you think it's going to be a sweet, fruity scent. Well, it is, but the dry down is very strong and very potent. But it's still a very sexy, sweet, and beautiful scent. And I really enjoy it. And I'm glad I got it. I didn't really get any other Miss Dior flankers since Miss Dior 2017, which was discontinued, but that one was absolutely gorgeous. But this one really spoke to me and I had to have it, and I'm so glad I got it. I did get a sample first, obviously. So that's Miss Dior Parfum 2024. And we've come to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, please let me know in the comments if you enjoy any of these fragrances. And I'm also curious to hear, what are your favorite Chypres? Do you even like Chypres? Let's chat in the comments. I always read your comments and I always reply because I'm so thankful for everyone's support. I truly have the best subscribers. So thanks for watching again. Have a nice week and I'll see you in my next video on Friday, hopefully. Bye.